by the pay-per-view price, which we're having here, you're looking at a little below 2 million homes to break the gross numbers. So there are two records which we are pursuing here, and I'm very motivated by that, because I remember the last time we did a business of boxing conference was back in 2007, and I was standing up here in front of some of the business press, and I was saying that we are going to break the record, and everybody was laughing at me and said, yeah, right, that was back in the day, that was Tyson and Holyfield, and those numbers are never going to be broken. How can those two guys, Mayweather and Oscar, break the all-time record? And nobody believed it, and we all know what happened. And here we are again, and I felt that this fight deserves a business sort of conference to outline why we believe that this really has the possibility to break those records. So the state of boxing in 2013, I think, is better than ever. We see new platforms emerging, and it's not just at the very top, like the Mayweathers and the Canelos, but it's really from the bottom up as well. We see a tremendous interest in the sport. Recently, Fox Sports 1 announced the new Monday night primetime boxing series. Ratings growth at the premium subscription channels like SHOWTIME is double-digit. So you see a tremendous. We see the attendance numbers, very important as well. We've been taking these fights into local market. Attendance numbers are significantly up. Record number in the Alamo Dome when we did the Canelo fight. But even when you look at the StubHub Center, the former Home Depot Center in Los Angeles, a first-class venue, some great fights were there, like Israel Vasquez against Rafael Marquez, which was Fight of the Year. And yet it was a couple months ago, where we broke the all-time attendance record at the StubHub Center when we had. Who was there, Stephen? It was Maidana, right? So exactly, so Maidana Lopez there. So you have those fights drawing in local markets, so there's really a resurgence of boxing. And I remember 3, 4, 5 years ago, I was standing here, and everybody was talking, and people were asking me, well, the sport is dying, and all these negative comments. Now you don't see them anymore. Now you don't hear them anymore, because boxing is back, bigger, better, and stronger. And I think the best proof is that when you have leading networks like Showtime or like Fox or others jumping on and doubling down on boxing, you know that there's something good going on. So I believe that, and I'm going to show you some numbers as well, because we actually asked one of the leading research firm in the United States, which is a company which does business for usually Fortune 100 companies. And Fortune 100 companies want to know about their product, about their platforms, about their brand. They go to a company called Scarborough Research, which I'm sure you guys know. And we actually went to Scarborough Research as well and asked them that we would like them to test the health of boxing. How is the perception of boxing today? We're going to show you some. It's a very extensive study, so I'm just going to show you some highlights of that study. Maybe come over here. So the first one is boxing is thriving. Compared to 2011 to 2012, you see in red. The interest of boxing fans has, as I mentioned, double-digit growth. Any interest in pro boxing, very interested in pro boxing. I mean, these are you don't have to go through all of them here, you can see them. And if you guys are interested later, I'll be happy to share it with you. But, watched on TV, pay-per-view, listened to on radio, everything is really a very, very strong numbers here. And then when you compare it with some of the leagues, you see obviously the NFL as the undisputed ruler when it comes to sports, with 61% of the people asked have expressed a level of interest in the NFL. And then you have Major League Baseball and NBA. Those three major leagues. And then you have like 4 of them in the 20s, NASCAR, PGA, NHL, Hockey League, and pro boxing in the 20s. And I think that shows you how high up on the perception scale boxing still is nowadays. The interesting thing here is, if I would have to take it back to my banking days, if boxing would be a stock, it would be a screaming buy. A screaming buy, because when you look at the license fees which are being paid by TV networks for NFL, baseball, NBA, NASCAR, PGA, and hockey, and you compare that with boxing, I mean, it's a joke. And that's why I think boxing is being rediscovered by TV networks as a sport who can deliver audiences and can do it in a very cost-effective way, frankly much more cost-effective than the NHL or some of the other ones here. Now, when you go to the Hispanic level of interest, and Leonard mentioned that before, since 2007 to now, obviously the growth of the Hispanic consumers has continued to grow. It's a continued snowball effect. So the Hispanic consumer, the Hispanic market is extremely important for boxing, and obviously is very important for this fight as well, given Canelo's background as the figure in Mexico. Canelo regularly outdraws the Mexican national soccer team on Televisa. Canelo's fights are shown on the #1 free over-the-air network, Televisa, and he really is the icon there. And I think that the fact that he is so entrenched there and has made his presence felt here in the United States, as well as we've seen in the Alamo Dome with 40,000 people there, drawing great live ratings on HBO as well. Canelo has arrived here, or as I said during the press tour, Canelo Mania has swept the United States, and I think that's why the Hispanic market is so important. And you see how close now the gap is between pro boxing and those 3 main sports. I mean, you're talking about a relatively small difference. So boxing is right there, and again, compared to ratings and cost factor, this is a screaming buy. Sports fans by race: Hispanic in red, black, African American in gray. So you have obviously the pro boxing. You look at these charts in the Hispanic Hispanic households. Pro boxing is #1 sport in the Hispanic homes, ahead of any other sport. And you look at the African American market with 17%. There is the major league. There is same like the NBA, and that's about it. So. And for that, I think what Floyd has done, he has obviously not only increased the awareness in the African American market, but I think what Floyd Mayweather has done is he has made the sport of boxing mainstream and has increased the level of interest in the Anglo market, in the African American market, and then we know, I already talked about Canelo's reach. Now, if you put those two together, if you put the Mayweather and the Canelo together, that's some of the reasons why we believe that this fight has the opportunity to break these records I have mentioned before. And this one here is just sort of like a fun chart. Has nothing really to do with today's press conference, but it's another question. Being a boxing promoter and being like traveling across the country and the world, you get asked certain questions. One question I was always asked was, when is Mayweather going to fight Pacquiao? Well, nobody's asking me that question anymore. Then they started asking, well, is Mayweather going to fight Canelo? And here we are. Another question I was asked, do you think you can get Garcia and Matisse done? There's no way Garcia is going to take Matisse, no way. Well, that fight is happening as well. The good news is, it's on the same card. I mean, when have we seen that? The two most anticipated sports in the sport, in the two most anticipated fights in the sport on the same night. Never happened before, which is another argument that as great as this first matchup is, Canelo and Mayweather, the Matisse-Garcia fight, I think, elevates this great night to an event level, which clearly has the whole world talking. But the other question I'm being asked, well, you know, UFC is kicking boxing's ass. Well, you know, you look at some of these charts here, and I didn't make that up, it's furthest from the truth. I think UFC and boxing can very well coexist. I think they're two different sports. And I have to tell you, from a momentum point of view, and a lot of people have told me that, they really feel that maybe 3-4 years ago, UFC had more momentum behind them. But today, boxing has more momentum behind them. And you see that with the pay-per-view numbers, you see that with the live gate numbers, and you just see that and feel that with the enthusiasm as you attend, as you are involved in the sport of boxing. Now, that sort of like sets the stage as it relates to the fight, as it relates to the sport, the health of the sport of boxing, and now we're going to get a little bit more event-specific with the 360-degree marketing approach. You see some of the activations here. Bruce will talk about some of them. You know, our sponsors have done a tremendous job. I think Bruce is going to cover that. So I am not going to mention that now, but I do want to mention quickly the publicity press tour, which Leonard had alluded to already. It was 10 cities. Never seen anything like that. I mean, there were well over 200,000 people when you add it all together. And what was interesting is, as Leonard mentioned as well, the fabric of those people which attended. There were children, there were families, female and male. It clearly is a fight which appeals to the masses. And they came out. And they came out and they were loud. And there were Canelo cheers, and when Mayweather was up there yelling hard work, the crowd responded with dedication. I mean, it was amazing. It was like I don't know, a presidential rally or so. I mean, this is like I wasn't part. It was like Beatlemania. I mean, it was just absolutely insane. And as we went from stop to stop, I started to realize. I knew the fight was big, but to be honest with you, I was surprised. I was even surprised at how big it really was and how big it was becoming with every stop. People lining up at 7 o'clock in the morning for a press conference in the afternoon at 3 o'clock. I mean, it was really, really impressive. And what usually happens as well, when you get these first bursts from the press conference, then the fight sort of like dies down a bit, it gets quiet, and then the last 2 weeks it picks up again. What we've seen with this fight here, there was a constant flow of interest and news and people talking about it. That fight never died down. It just kept its momentum going. So I don't know, Bruce, if you want to jump in here, or maybe you're going to come okay. Okay. So so we're going to talk about. Stephen, you want to talk about what the Showtime is going to? Okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, some of the elements as well. ESPN's magazine is going to be on the stands, I guess, this week, right? And it has 2 covers. One of them is Floyd, and the other one is Canelo. I mean, that is amazing as well. They made a special fight issue, so that's going to be on all the newsstands.
Estas fueron las imágenes de un resumen grandioso de lo que va a ser esta pelea, una pelea entre Mayweather y el Canelo que está rompiendo récords y que se espera sea la pelea del siglo porque hasta el momento ha rompido récords de taquilla. Esperamos que también de Showtime. Informó para Bereavision, Levi Morales.